Welcome back to the Rhody Beat Report, the newest show from Rhody Football Front Office Productions. My name is Peter Gigliotti. Joining me on the desk are Zack Petrick, Justin Theriault, and Alexa Baker. We've got a great episode for you all today, discussing the Rams win over the LIU Sharks, our game reaction and analysis to that win, the bye week, what went on, and how they're preparing for Hampton University. All that and more. Make sure to stay tuned for this episode of Rhody Beat Report.
Not long ago, your Rhode Island Rams improved to 3-1 on the season with a comeback win over the LIU Sharks. Now we're going to turn it to our desk for our reaction and analysis.
As the Rams deferred the coin toss to the second half, the defense took a stand, forcing a quick 3-and-out to get the offense on the field. The offense then drove down the field very quickly, led by a 25-yard rush by quarterback Devin Farrell, followed by a 16-yard reception by Greg Gaines III. Then, to close out the drive, running back Malik Grant had back-to-back shotgun carries, including a 7-yard rushing touchdown to take a 7-0 lead.
Last week we talked about how LIU wanted to run the football before anything else, and that is exactly what they did. Like Holy Cross Week 1, the Sharks relentlessly chipped away at the yards, and before long scored 2 touchdowns in the second quarter to take a 14-7 lead into halftime. The Rams consistently forced LIU into third down territory, but the Sharks kept finding a way to remain on the field.
Yeah, and Rhode Island's defense was really great throughout this performance. In the third quarter, offense, not as much. Going into the third quarter, they didn't pick up any first downs. Then in the fourth quarter, the offense finally able to get going. They came alive, scoring 3 touchdowns within 12 minutes. Hunter Helms came into the game, which always is a pretty nice sight, pretty surprising. They're still rolling with this dual quarterback action into the fourth week of the season. He came in with running backs Malik Grant and Deion Silas to provide a great change of pace, which is what we wanted to see from these guys. It was nice to see Malik Grant pop off, too. Always love that. The two tandem pushed Rhody down the field, with Grant taking the charge and an 8-yard run on the go-ahead touchdown with 1:08 left on the clock. In the end, the Rams defense had a big pass breakup as time expired in their own end zone to end the ball game and secure their third win of the season. All right, now that has been over a week since your Rhode Island Rams defeated the LIU Sharks 28-21, let's move over to our desk for a little game reaction and analysis.
It was a breakout performance from Malik Grant. You kind of hinted at it, Peter, how great it was to see the Sacred Heart transfer really make his impact felt. He was one of the most notable FCS transfers, especially on the East Coast. In this game, he was absolutely phenomenal. 20 carries, 141 yards, and 3 touchdowns. All of those were season-high numbers for him. And now on the season, he's at 241 yards with an average of 4.9 yards a carry, which is a good mark. Obviously, it could be better. I think anybody who's a football fan knows it's the 4.0 mark that you're looking to get. And then once you kind of get over that 5 mark and start to get to 6 territory, that's when you're talking about elite running back status. And I think at this point in the season, we can expect Malik Grant to likely climb to that number throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, we had mentioned a few times before in prior episodes that this run game is something we really wanted the Rams to get going. We were waiting for one guy to emerge from this pack finally. It seems like Grant's going to be the guy, which is what we honestly expected at the beginning of the season. Yeah. So good to see.
We talk about Grant so much, but Deion Silas, 10 carries, 46 yards. That's season-high numbers for him this year. It's now starting to earn his keep in the committee backfield that we've mentioned so much. I mean, Silas' low center of gravity provides him with some great balance, and he made that apparent consistently throughout the game. He also provided a huge momentum swing for the Rams with a 23-yard carry that absolutely set the sidelines on fire. The Rhody sideline went crazy with that 23-yard rush. Both Grant and Silas were also involved in the passing game as well. They combined for 2 receptions for 32 yards.
And speaking of their impact in the passing game, something that I've noticed throughout the first 4 games of this season has been Deion's ability as a pass blocker. You talked about his low center of gravity. He's a shorter running back. I think he only stands around 5'6". Mentioned great for contact balance, but also great for pass blocking. His leverage is always fantastic. Whenever you watch him picking up a blitzing linebacker or blitzing safety, he always gets low and makes a great block. And I remember in the Holy Cross game, unfortunately, a holding call took back a wonderful touchdown thrown by Farrell, but that play was only sparked because of the Deion block, and I expect that we will see more of that going forward.
100%. More ways to help this team out than just downfield running.
Yeah.
And you talk about the passing game. To start off about the quarterbacks, Devin Farrell started the game. He led the Rams downfield confidently with that opening drive touchdown, but he failed to establish some consistency. He finished 4 for 9 with 44 yards, while also taking 2 sacks and only added 3 rushes for 14 total yards. The coaching staff still remains confident in Farrell's abilities, but the consistency remains an issue about a third into the season.
Yeah, and Hunter Helms came in during the second half of the game, nearly throwing an interception on his first pass attempt. However, it became clear quickly that Helms' experience and velocity as a precision passer provided a huge boost to the offense. He commanded the unit confidently, finishing the game 7 for 10 with 90 yards, even adding a key rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter, which was huge for him.
So now the question becomes, how will these two share time going forward after this bye week? Peter, what do you think?
Well, I think when you look at the offense and who's been starting for the Rams, Devin Farrell seems to be the guy for me. I think his running ability adds a lot to this Rams offense. I wanted to say this all along, that a lot of the confidence from this team comes from their run game. We talked about that's why we wanted someone to emerge from this backfield so badly, because it's a focal point of their offense. Obviously, they have great receivers. Marquise Buchanan is probably one of the best in the division. But I think Devin adds a nice bit of variety that you don't usually get with a lot of quarterbacks nowadays. He's mobile. His passing game is pretty good, and he's really quick on his feet. So I'd definitely like to see him continue to start for the Rams.
I second that, Peter. I think that, one, he's already been your starter every week.
Yeah.
His rushing ability, you might remember my rant from week 1, he provides a type of spacing that you can't get with every type of quarterback. You have to respect the reaction. You have to respect, RPOs with him, right? You can't collapse in on the edges for the interior run game. I don't think he is, a great passer like we might label Hunter Helms, but I think that his arm is not bad in any sort of way.
Not at all.
And I think it's more of a timing thing. When you watch them play, especially in the Campbell game, especially in the Holy Cross game, when the timing is right for everybody, for Greg Gaines, for Sean Harris, right, for Buchanan, Tommy Smith, all the great receivers on this team, and you see Devin reach the bottom of his 3-step drop and make an immediate decision because somebody has created separation, that's when this team is really clicking. And it allows you to play sort of a hurry-up offense. So the hurry-up offense, forcing the defense to spread out and respect the running game as well as the passing game, I think is huge from, the position of starting Farrell. And also I just think it's a leadership thing. Farrell has been here for multiple years. He's been a guy who's known everybody on this team for quite some time now. I think the guys rally behind him and his rushing ability, and we've seen times where things have broken down and he's had to play hero ball, and he's done it very well.
Yeah, but you want to talk about experience. There's one guy on this roster who spent quite a few years at a pretty high prestige college. You guys want to talk about Hunter Helms?
Yeah, so on the flip side, Devin Farrell is a running quarterback, whereas Hunter Helms is more of a precision passer. Playing underneath quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, he provides a lot of invaluable experience. Zach, what do you think more about him?
Yeah, I think, we talk about Farrell and that rushing ability, and Helms, what he gives you as a passer is, so impressive. I mean, we mentioned he went to Clemson for all of those years, walked on, earned himself a scholarship, was able to, learn from great quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence. And so I think that was the key last week. And that he was able to really command the offense. And, he had a rushing touchdown. It's not that he can't rush. He doesn't have the speed that Farrell has, obviously. Of course, we've seen that. But I think that there's a chance for them to be able to develop this passing game with those fantastic receivers that you mentioned already. And that can really push this offense forward, especially if a guy like Malik Grant is going to push that rushing attack forward.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you watch the two of them play, because it's not that the play calling is necessarily different, but the two players approach the game differently. One is truly a pocket passing quarterback who, you're right, does have some rushing ability. And when you're inside the 5, he's built strongly enough where he can run through a defender and get into the end zone if he's at the goal line.
He's a big dude.
He is, yeah, exactly. But it's not the same way where Devin, it's like the 4th and 12 in the Holy Cross game, and Devin is able to pick up that touchdown or the 30-yard touchdown he had in that game. You wouldn't expect that.
Plays like
you wouldn't expect that from Hunter. But yeah, Hunter has showcased a really strong arm. There have been times where you can tell that maybe him and his receivers aren't on the same page. Either the receiver's not running the correct route, or he thinks the receiver is running a different route. Somebody's in the wrong. And his arm is extremely strong, and we've seen some very accurate passes. There have been times where we've seen maybe a lapse in concentration, or maybe just airmailing a pass. And most of the time, it's okay if you airmail a pass, especially if it's to the sidelines. But more often than not, if you're airmailing the pass over the middle of the field, disaster is you typically potentially moving.
Yeah.
And back to Hunter Helms, he is an underdog and is used to having to work for his starting position, and I think that works in his favor here with Rhody.
We talked about it for almost every single week now. The Rams' pass defense is legit. In terms of FCS, they show up every single game. LIU only threw 197 passing yards on 32 attempts, completing just 19 on the day. The rotation at quarterback for the Sharks, it was an impressive performance considering the different looks that they gave us. But our defensive backs really held it down.
Yeah, that position group has been fantastic throughout the entire course of the season. And we've seen teams, twice now with many attempts, 30-plus attempts, and still unable to crack the 200 number. And I think that having a bunch of DBs that are all very talented and being able to rotate guys in and out, keep those fresh legs, has been a huge part of this. They're great in pass coverage. They're great in open field tackling. All these guys that are playing at safety or corner have shown the ability to just be all-around football players who you can kind of plug and play really anywhere.
And I think when you talk about that defensive back group, Ayinde Johnson, his name comes up because he was an LIU Shark. And, he was really impressive in that last game. 5 total tackles with 1 PBU against his former team. So I think that, you talk about that group as a whole, and he led the way on Saturday.
Yeah, a little bit of a revenge game. A little bit more to the gas tank, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about the transfer portal era. Every football game you watch, it feels like there's somebody that was on the team previously, and now they're playing their former team. And typically, it does light a fire under them, and they typically have their best performances, and that's what we saw from Johnson this week. He was fantastic again, and it is always nice to one-up your former program.
As previously mentioned, the Rams defense have looked great over the last 2 weeks after a tough outing week 1 against Holy Cross. Running back Ludovic Choquette, who stands at 5'10", 214 pounds, finished with 16 carries for 70 rushing yards as he barreled his way through these tough scrimmage yards. While Choquette never had a carry bigger than 19 yards rushing, he had numerous crucial carries that kept drives alive for the Sharks.
Yeah, and for the Rams, it was, of course, Wesley Neal Jr. and linebacker Cole Brockwell that did a lot of this run stuffing for the Rams. Those two have been absolutely fantastic inside that front seven, right? Wesley Neal, the nose tackle for the Rams, has been here the last 4 years. Cole Brockwell, new to the program, but fantastic from that linebacker position. They've done a great job so far this year stuffing the run for the Rams. And now we're going to move on to the Rams bye week. As the Rams come off their early season bye, let's look at the top performances so far this season, and let's look at the final 2/3 of this year's schedule. Peter, I'll throw it to you first so we can talk about the Rams defense.
Yeah, man. This defense gets me excited. You want to talk about a unit that's one of the best in FCS? It's Rhode Island. I mean, if we're talking in terms of games, yards per game, only 350 yards of total offense per game, 150 rushing, 200 passing to their opponents so far. This Rams team currently holds the 5th-ranked defense in CAA through 4 games, which would be ranked higher if the outcome of the Minnesota game wasn't really factored into it. But in total, this defense definitely the primary unit so far.
Yeah, but then we're going to go and talk about that offense. Only averaging 326 total yards per game with a conference low 17 points per game. But the ground game has quickly turned around for the Rams, leading the way with 116 rushing yards per game. So really impressive rushing attack, which we've talked about so much already today and in the past. While the passing game has become more limited by the week, only averaging 167 yards per game. So the Rams must find some consistency and stop kicking themselves in the foot following this bye week and going into Hampton week. The talent and potential is there to be as explosive as they were in 2023 and the past. It is simply a matter of just putting the passing and rushing game all together at once.
Yeah, and the most important stat for the Rams throughout 4 games this season lies in time of possession. The Rams offense is only on the field for an average of 24 minutes per game, while the defense is only on the field for 36 minutes per game. The ratio is not a sustainable winning formula, and while the flashes have been there for the offense, they simply need to perform better.
And now we're going to start to look towards our standout performances in the offense. I know we just talked about time of possession, but that is more so on the turnovers. So regardless of the turnovers, a lot of these guys like Malik Grant and Marquise Buchanan, Greg Gaines, have all been fantastic so far this season. So we mentioned it earlier, Malik Grant, 49 carries, 241 yards this season and 3 touchdowns, all of which came last week. So I expect that number to continue to rise. I expect we will see some more weeks like this past one where he sort of is able to take over the running game. And the wide receiver trio that we always praise, super talented group. Greg Gaines this season, 11 catches, 134 yards, a touchdown. I think he's looked fantastic in the slot. I love watching him run those seam routes. He's a big body wide receiver that does a great job of boxing out strong safeties and outside linebackers on those routes. And I think it's been honestly one of the best play calls we've had so far this season, especially inside the red zone. Marquise Buchanan so far this year, all CAA in the preseason, 14 catches on the year, 209 yards and a touchdown. Sean Harris, known for the miracle at Meade reception so far this season, 12 catches, 132 yards and a touchdown. And then finally, we have Trey Alexander. We want to give our center some love right now. 121 snaps on the season. He's played every single snap and has not allowed a single snap. And in fact, even when you factor in the Minnesota game, he's only allowed one pressure so far this season. So that interior offensive line, those wide receivers, some of those running backs, they've been absolutely fantastic so far this season. Now, obviously, we want to limit turnovers, but those individuals have just been absolutely fantastic this year.
And then now when you look at the other side of the ball, the defense, which we know have already been so fantastic. Linebacker Cole Brockel, 41 tackles, a forced fumble, and that fumble recovery. He has been one of the lead tacklers for this Rams defense so far. He's been fantastic. Linebacker AJ Pena, I mean, we know how good AJ really is on the field. So dominant every time he steps foot on the turf, on the grass, whatever surface they're playing on. He has been fantastic. 25 tackles, 6 of those for loss, 5 sacks. He has been fantastic, one of the leaders of the Rams defense, as he has been for multiple years now. Quarterback Ayinde Johnson, we already mentioned him for that game against LIU. 17 tackles, 4 PBUs this year. And we mentioned, we continue to talk about that defensive back room. Cornerback Freddie Millay, 24 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 pass breakups. Continues to be solid, continues to improve week by week. He has been really good in that defensive back room. And then defensive tackle Wesley Neal Jr., 19 tackles, and he has just been elite at stopping the run at that nose tackle position. Again, another guy that has been an anchor for this Rams defense. We see him every week come out and be dominant. And so I think that, he's a guy that if they're going to want to be able to continue this strong defensive play, stopping the run with Wesley Neal Jr. at nose tackle is going to be a real key piece.
Yeah, this defense is just full of dogs, man.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to mention this earlier. We walked out of our production meeting yesterday, and I'm walking back through Mackle. The entire football team's off the field. Their practices ended. There was one player left on the field. It was AJ Pena.
I mean, that's the kind of guy he's a leader in that locker room. Everybody on the team respects him. But the stat that stood out to me on that sheet was Freddie Millay's tackle count. Right? 24 tackles on the season from the defensive back position is no small feat. I think we talked about it in week 1. That week, the defense, really so far this season, the defense has sort of struggled with that first line of defense, making the tackles on the running backs. If the hole opens, we just haven't done a good job of shutting it down. But Freddie Millay has done a good job of filling in that gap, right? And so this week, you hope that those linebackers and safeties and corners like Freddie Millay continue to do a good job of plugging up the holes that open up in the running game. Because that tackling ability, the open field tackling ability, has saved multiple touchdowns this season, and it's contributed a lot to what is one of the better defenses in the CAA.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of giving some certain guys shout-outs, let's move on to players to watch for the rest of the season. You would have thought it would have been Freddie Millay, the amount of time to talk about him, but actually I'm going to start with Tommy Smith. When used as a pass catcher, he's been fantastic for the Rams. He's a good safety valve in that offense that's full of a lot of faster guys. He's not the fastest guy on the field. He's not going to wow you with his speed, but he really is tough, and he's good as a blocker, kind of like a fill-in tight end guy. But his newfound talent here in this Rams offense has really been beneficial for them so far.
Yeah, Tommy Smith does everything you ask of him. And I think that's what the coaches love about him. Came here as a quarterback, then became a tight end, and now he's at wide receiver. And due to injuries at the tight end position, you will see him out there playing at the tight end position. Typically a 2 tight end set, right? Not going to be the primary tight end out there. You're not asking him to down block on the defensive end. But his ability to chip and run routes has been huge for this team. He's a big wide receiver, and on those 3rd down plays or 4th down plays sometimes even, whenever we see Devin or Hunter scramble out, he is the target they're looking for. He knows how to find space, get open. He's an experienced player. He was once a quarterback, so he understands what they're looking for. And his ability to just do everything on the field has just been huge so far for the Rams.
I like to look at Tommy Smith as like our own little version of Taysom Hill.
I knew you were going to say that.
Our own little Taysom Hill. I love Tommy Smith. Zach, do you want to talk about our defensive player to watch?
Yeah, so we've already talked about the defense so much. I could go on and on forever. But, Carson Primrose has constantly wreaking havoc with his quick feet and strong pad levels. So he's just been really, really good so far. I think everybody on this Rams defense has just continued to show up week by week and been fantastic. And then as well, safety Andre DePina-Gray. I mean, we talk about him almost every week. I can't believe he's even on the players to watch because we've already talked about him so much. He's emerged as a future stud. I mean, in the secondary, talk about the defensive back room. He has been a key piece so far. Really fantastic everywhere. He really patrols the field well, has done a great job back there at the safety position.
All right, well, in the middle of this episode, we want to throw in something fun. We wanted to recap our favorite moments of Rhode Island football so far in our careers. Personally, I have two. My first one is the first game I ever got to record for the Good 5 Cent Cigar, which is the URI newspaper, was against Stony Brook University last year. Jordan Colbert made a leaping interception. Crowd went wild. It was very cool for me because that was kind of a big reaffirming moment. Like, yeah, this is what you work for in sports media. It was very cool. Shout out to Jordan Colbert, got to go on the Miami Dolphins practice squad this year. Another moment, though, if we're going to go from this season, is Devin Farrell's 4th and 13 run in the first week against Holy Cross. Game-changing moment for him.
Yeah. I think for me, I have also two moments, both against the same team, but 2 different years. Our freshman year, Stony Brook came to town. I'm from Long Island. You know, I don't go to Stony Brook. I'm not a fan of Stony Brook, never have been. We beat them in overtime, great, fantastic game. And so it was really fun to see us, overtime victory against Stony Brook. And then before our sophomore year, the schedule flips. We have to go to Stony Brook, but we hadn't moved in yet. I hadn't moved into Brookside Hall yet. And so my friend and I, who's also from Long Island, were roommates. We said, why don't we go to Stony Brook and we'll see the team. And so we got to see the team come out, open their season with a victory at Stony Brook. So, those were 2 really fun moments. Being able to go into an away game and just enjoy it and be a fan was some of my favorite.
I love how you mentioned that you don't go to Stony Brook.
Everyone's obvious.
Breaking news from the Rhody Beat Reports desk. Cigar Sports editor Zack Petrick does not go to Stony Brook
and doesn't like them either. So my favorite moment this season, obviously everyone loves the Miracle at Meade, but against Campbell, I was really impressed with that goal line stand. It really energized the crowd at the end of that first half. It was a great moment for the defense and that interior front. But all time, easily, has to be the 2022 season, the final game against Albany. I was on the call, and going into that game, the expectation was that another school in the CAA had to lose and URI had to win, and that would give us a chance to get into the postseason. Now, we all know that didn't happen. URI deserving to feel like they got snubbed that year, but that game, Marquise DeShields, the grad transfer from St. Francis, had over 200 yards and a touchdown. Absolute dominant performance, was running through defenders. He even had a 20-yard reception. He was just all around dominant. I've done a good handful of football games on air, FM and whatnot. I've done a lot of other sports as well. Never in any game have I ever witnessed such a singular dominant performance by any individual athlete like I did with Marquise DeShields 2 years ago against the University of Albany.
Yeah, and on the other side for me, outside of this, I work in the marketing office, and on football game days, I am the so-called DJ in the press box with football games. And I take a lot of pride in the music that I choose to play throughout the game, and it's fun when I see the players and the fans also dancing and engaging with the music. A couple weeks ago, I played Party in the USA at the end of the game right before we won. And I could see all the fans, all the players dancing on the field, and it just makes me feel good knowing that I was the one who chose to play that song.
I had no idea you did that.
Are you worried about song requests now? I feel like people might start, you revealing this. Is
song requests will be accepted, but they will not be necessarily played. I will take them into consideration.
I want some swag surf in the Meade Stadium. That's what I want. All right, moving on to Hampton. The Rams have a tough matchup this week against Hampton University with the bye week behind us. It's time to break down what these Pirates are going to bring to us this week. Entering this week, Hampton owns a 3-2 record. The team lost their home opener to Morgan State before winning 3 straight against Virginia Union, Norfolk State, and Howard. However, to open CAA play, the Pirates were demolished by CAA contender William & Mary this past week. Justin, do you want to talk about how they're going to get back on track?
Yeah, so the Pirates are obviously going to aim to get back on track against URI. It's their first time playing URI as conference opponents. They're new to the conference, replacing Delaware leaving after this year, Richmond leaving after this year. We already know that JMU left. So the Rams look to contend against the likes of teams like William & Mary and whatnot, the teams that are expected to dominate the CAA conference. So it's important that the Rams do not allow the Pirates to get back on track. And you kind of show that you're similar to a school like William & Mary and that you can also walk away from this game with a very strong victory against a Hampton program that historically isn't all that great. So to that, the Rams must stop the run. What Hampton does well is run the ball. Their offensive line is huge. All but one of those offensive linemen are all above 330 pounds. They're all older students, right? And so this year they average 192 yards on the ground, and they have 14 touchdowns.
That's
14
crazy.
rushing touchdowns at this point in the season is kind of ridiculous.
That's insane.
That is insane. And so they also have 4 players with over 100 yards. So it's not just one guy, right? It's a whole committee of backs so far this season getting it done for the Hampton Pirates. They're led by senior Elijah Burris, and he's averaging 22 touches per game. So I know I just said it's by committee, right? They have guys who certainly could start elsewhere, but expect a lot of Elijah Burris, right? And so what the Rams have to do is they're going to not only have to stop the run game, but also disrupt the pass game, right, for Hampton. Don't allow them to be multifaceted. Force them to do one or the other. Because if you get them, right, if you take that lead, 2-score lead, you're going to force them to start passing the ball. And that's not their strong suit. And we already talked about just how great the Rams passing defense is. And now you're kind of playing to your strong, you're making them play your game now and playing into your strong suit. Hampton plays 2 quarterbacks. We've seen a lot of this, and the Rams themselves do this as well. And both of these guys are going to play a lot of snaps. It won't be just a one-drive thing. Both of these guys will play a lot. It's Chris Zelius and Malcolm Mays. Those would be the 2 that we see a lot of from the Pirates. And to get the offense rolling early, we're still kind of waiting to see them do that, right? Get it going early. I think we're going to need to see a strong running game right out the gate, right? You need to see a repeat for performance from Malik Grant. You maybe want to get Gabe Sloat involved in the passing game. And whichever quarterback it is that is going to start this week, you want to see them start strong, just like they did this past week, but then maintain that consistency throughout the game. That way you don't feel like you maybe have to go to the whichever quarterback you're not starting.
Yeah, it's time to really ride out the momentum they had from last week. Carry that momentum from the end of that fourth quarter into this game against Hampton. Script some plays heading into the game. Utilize your strong points. If you're going to start Devin Farrell, RPOs, play actions, play to your strong suit. Coming into this game, that's very important to get the momentum going early, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, Hampton, they allowed 200 yards per game on the ground. So the Rams, we already talked about, Justin, you said being able to really be able to run the ball. The Rams, Deion Silas, Malik Grant, Gabe Sloat, they're going to want to pound the rock right, at Hampton, be able to, really get down the field using the rushing game and then be able to pass on top of that. Hampton has been susceptible to the explosive play as the offense allows an average of 8.5 yards per pass attempt. So the Rams, they want to get the ball going on the ground. You want to see that repeat performance from Malik Grant. But if that's not working, this Pirate defense has not been great against the pass. And so I think if it's Hunter Helms, we talked about the precision passer, if he can really come out and just dial it up and find these really talented receivers that this Rams team has, they will have success even without the rushing game. But you're really hoping, if they get both working, it could be really dangerous really quickly.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of Rhody Beat Report. This is Alexa Baker. I'm joined here by Justin Theriault, Zack Petrick, and Peter Gigliotti. Tune in next week as the Rams come home for the Governor's Cup versus Brown.